Hello and welcome to Devil's Advocate on a weekend when the Human Resource Development Ministry and the IIT faculties appear to be at loggerheads with each other. But just how serious is the standoff, or has the situation in fact been misunderstood? That's the key issue I shall explore today with the Human Resource Development Minister himself, Kapil Sibal. Mr. Sibal, there's a widespread belief as a result of your interviews and your comments that you're implacably opposed to the demands made by the IIT faculties. Is that really the case, or are you in fact much more flexible than people have understood to be the case?
I've always been flexible, and the system itself is flexible. So I think they've entirely misunderstood the position of the ministry.
So in other words, the impression that you're entirely opposed to the IIT demands is actually based on a misunderstanding.
A misunderstanding of the system, how it works, and how the IIT system itself works,
and possibly
and our own position on it.
So, and it's also possible that this is a misunderstanding of things that you said.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Let's then, to clarify the situation, go through the principal demands of the IIT faculties one by one so that you can explain what is in fact your actual response to them. To begin with, the IITs are perplexed, perhaps I should put it a little stronger, concerned by your recent stipulation that at least 10% of new take entries into the faculty should be by way of contract. Let me begin by asking you, what's the purpose behind that?
The purpose is that normally, and that's the norm, a person who is a PhD without industrial experience, without teaching experience, without research experience should be on contract, but in a regular position, not ad hoc, on contract. And if at the end of 3 years, the IIT people and the board feels that he should be absorbed, he should be absorbed. However, this is the norm. If, however, in the course of these 3 years, the IIT board or the director recommends to the board that, look, this man is outstanding, let's even waive the 3-year period, we would not interfere in that.
You said something very important. You're saying that although the 10% requirement for new entrants to faculty to be taken on contract is a norm,
yes,
and the norm is designed to ensure that the best people come, exactly, and you don't get left or straddled with people you don't want. Nonetheless, you've said to me that exceptional people at the discretion of IIT directors can be taken on tenure from the outset.
Oh, absolutely. Not only exceptional people, but people who have been taken on 3-year contract and who expect to be absorbed after 3 years. Even their term can be reduced in the event the IIT board says, here's a man who's exceptional, let's waive the 3 years.
So two things are possible.
Yes.
Firstly, people can be taken on tenure if they're exceptional from the very outset, and secondly, even those who are taken on contract for 3 years, their term can be reduced and they can be put on tenure at the end of, say, 1 year.
Absolutely. And let me tell you another thing. The previous IIT system, every person absorbed in a regular position had to be on probation for 1 year before he could be absorbed, even under the previous system.
So now you're saying something else as well. You're actually saying to me that the residual powers, Clause 6(1)(h) of the IIT Acts, which apply to all IITs, which allow the directors under certain exceptional circumstances to set special terms and conditions for the intake of faculty, those remain intact.
Absolutely. And let me tell you another thing, that what I'm really concerned about is uniformity. The IIT system must be uniform in its application, that all of them should get together and say, in these circumstances, we can absorb a fellow even before.
But let me underline the one very important thing you said, which I believe will be reassuring to the faculties, that firstly, the 10% guideline for intake of new faculty on contractual basis is in fact a norm, and you have not done away with, you are not undermining the power and the capacity of directors to take in exceptional individuals, absolutely, on tenure from the outset.
Have a Stephen Hawking. If you find a Stephen Hawking, take him. If you find a CNR Rao, take him. I have no problems.
All right, a second area of concern for the IIT faculties is the stipulation that no one can become a professor in the IIT unless he or she has done at least 4 years as an assistant professor, either within the IIT structure or in an equivalent institution at an equivalent level. Now, let me put this to you. Are there situations where you are prepared to accept that IIT directors could have the discretion for exceptional candidates to waive this requirement?
Well, you know, on this current, it was their own guideline. I mean, their own guideline says 10 years teaching experience, 4 years or whatever X number of years as assistant or associate professor. They should have their own guidelines. We don't want to interfere in those systems. This is for the purposes of getting into the associate professor and the professor grade.
Absolutely. They have their own guidelines. You want to abide by them. Yes, you don't want to interfere. But does the director of an IIT have the discretion to waive the requirement or reduce it?
See, waiver should not be a norm.
No,
Let's be
absolutely.
clear.
But in
Waiver,
exceptional cases.
but that they have to then set standards as to what those exceptional cases are, so that that discretion is not abused. If they come to the government saying these are the circumstances in which give us, the IIT board should have the power to waive, I would have no problems with that.
So once again, I want to clarify what you're saying, because I think it's important. You're saying provided they set standards, and provided as a result it's not arbitrary,
Right.
they then do have the capacity and the power to either waive or reduce the 4-year requirement.
Karan, the government will never stand in the way of the IIT system to absorb exceptional cases.
But can I ask you just
These rules are meant for people who are, of a certain standard, not for exceptional categories.
But because this is so important, I'm repeating it because I'd like your clarification on it. You therefore do accept that although the norm is that before anyone becomes a professor, he or she must have spent 4 years as an associate professor in the IIT system. For exceptional candidates, the directors of IIT have the power to either waive or reduce that 4-year requirement.
The directors always had the power.
Always
Always
had that
had the power. And we never interfered with that power. Many a time, even with previous regulations, they would deviate from the norm and ask the IIT, has the government ever interfered?
So that power continues.
It's always,
That's
it's
not
always,
precluded.
Exceptional power is always there.
IIT faculties often take the example, in particular, of Professor C.N.R. Rao, who in the period 63-64, within a period of just 15 months, went from being an associate professor at IIT Kanpur to a full professor. That sort of speedy promotion for an exceptional person is still possible.
Of course it's possible. Let me tell you this. After C.N.R. Rao, that means in 1963 that happened, we are in the year 2009. And we haven't had a single exceptional case since then. But so if you're taking C.N.R. Rao's example, it goes way back to
Absolutely.
1960.
But the point I'm making
if there is a C.N.R. Rao or a Stephen Hawking, we will do that.
Your rules and stipulations don't stand in the way of such a
No,
person.
they will not.
All right, let's come then to the third, and for some perhaps the biggest concern that the IIT faculties have, the 40% cap that you put on professors who can avail of the senior most salary grade. First of all, is this 40% rigid or is it flexible?
First of all, this issue is hypothetical, Karan, because when I say a 40% cap, it is for an incentive. In other words, you're going to get an extra grade pay if you are excellent or you performed excellently in science and engineering, right? So this 40% will start when the rule is being implemented. So at the end of the first year, 40% professors will not be given.
So it will only happen in 3, 4 or 5 years down the road.
Incremental, even more, because 50% of all faculty in the IIT, by and large, are professors. So this will happen incrementally over a period of 5, 7, 10 years.
So the cap won't be hit for the next 5 or 10 years, you're saying.
Exactly.
In other words, if it is a problem, and I'll come to that in a moment's time,
Yeah.
if it is a problem, it's a problem 5 or 10 years down the road, not today.
Exactly.
That's the first clarification. The second is this. It is hypothetical, but it's very important to the IIT faculties. They say, suppose in year A, something like 36% or 37% of the professors of a particular IIT are already at the top salary grade. And then, in the next year or so, the director decides that there are 3 or 4 more who deserve to be put on the same grade because they've done good work and they should be rewarded. But that addition takes the percentage from 38 to 42. Now, in those circumstances, will 40% be a bar or will you be flexible?
Remember this, in government, norms are guidelines. They should be adhered to, right? And we are talking about a 40% cap, overall cap. You may in one year have 25%. Another year you may have,
that I follow.
42%.
But come to the hypothetical.
And if there's a hypothetical question 10 years down the road that no, we need beyond 40%, we'll visit it. We'll revisit the whole thing. What's the problem? But why are you going on a possible hunger protest on an issue that will happen 10 years from now?
So what you've underlined is 2 very important things. First of all, the 40% cap, if it bites, will only bite 5 or 10 years down the road, not now. And secondly, in a situation where it is seeming to bite, the government can revisit it.
Absolutely.
In other words, this is not a bar to people crossing, it's simply a guideline, and you'll revisit it if the problem happens when it happens.
Karan, let me say another thing. Government does not get involved in any of this. This is a norm that we have set. The administration is done by the Board of Governors. I am even going to this extent. The Board of Governors, if it finds, you don't have to refer anything to government. The Board of Governors of the IIT, and we rely on their integrity. if they feel in any of these situations that you have mentioned, all the three situations, that something should be done which will promote excellence, you can rest assured, the IIT system can rest assured that Kapil Sibal will not interfere.
In other words, the final power and authority to determine the implementation of the rules and regulations is with the Board of Governors and therefore within the IIT system.
Yes, yes, but they should have a uniform standard.
And it mustn't be arbitrary.
Of governance, not arbitrary, and it should be the normative basis of doing all this must be set out within the IIT system
that I understand.
uniformly.
It mustn't be idiosyncratic and eccentric, it mustn't be arbitrary, it must be as per laid down guidelines.
It shouldn't be, you are my chela, I will give you this.
But there's something very important that emerges in particular from your last answer. You give me the impression that you not only understand the need for, but you appreciate and are prepared to protect something that the IITs are very proud of, what they call the flexibility of their cadre. You're happy to protect that.
Not only that, I will go, walk a mile with them if they walk 2 steps with me. I want to give them more autonomy. I want to give them more flexibility. But they need to set standards for themselves, because the IIT system, the faculty has not delivered as per our expectations in the last 30-40 years.
That's a second issue that I want to come to, and I'll come to in a moment's time. But the first, again, I want to underline, you understand the need for, and you are reiterating that you will protect the flexibility of cadres that the IITs have always enjoyed.
Not just IIT system, of all educational institutions.
Maybe, but the point is the IITs say that their flexibility has been inherent in their system in a way in which it hasn't applied to other universities. You're prepared to protect that.
We have never interfered in that. These guidelines don't interfere in that. That flexibility remains.
All right. Now, the other issue that you touched on a moment ago, that the IITs haven't been delivering for the last 10 years, maybe more, in the way that you would like them to do so. The IIT faculties themselves accept that they are not attracting the sort of talent to their faculty that they would like to and that they believe they should. Are you willing to sit down with them and work out methods, procedures, incentives, imaginative proposals that will overcome this problem?
I'm going to call a council meeting, and the item on the agenda will be how to increase your autonomy and your excellence. Remember, we may praise the IIT system, but the IIT system has not produced any Nobel laureates. And the IIT faculty, in terms of publications, has not met global standards.
And therefore, what you want to do is to call a meeting of all the IITs with yourself as the chairman of the IIT Council presiding, so that together, as a family, if I can use that phrase, you can tackle this problem of why aren't the IITs delivering?
Absolutely.
How quickly will you do it? How urgent
probably
is this?
next month.
So this is a priority for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've already given orders that this council meeting should be called, even before this interview.
Clearly, in this interview, you've given a lot of assurance to the IIT faculties on the 3-4 top demands that they have. And if they hear you, which I'm sure they will realize that there's a lot of flexibility and that far from being opposed to them, you're actually willing to understand and make allowance for their concerns. Now, how do we go forward? Are you prepared, after this interview, to pick up the phone and contact someone like Professor Tanmosi to say, come and meet me, I can assure you that I can take care of your problems?
Karan, it's no need for me to do this. The IIT Board of Governors directors should meet the faculty, because all this has been explained to the directors. That's why you will find not a single director making a statement or joining the IIT faculty.
In other words, the onus is on the directors to explain to the faculty. But can I put one thing?
And what I have said today and I have been saying is the public domain. What I told the directors was in a closed door meeting, exactly consistent with what I am saying.
Now it's for the directors to
communicate. It's for the directors to communicate. Let them do that.
But can I say one thing? Since you've been so effective in communicating in the public domain through this interview, can you not pick up the phone and contact 2 or 3 of the top faculty?
You know what happens in these situations? Many things will arise which are much beyond what you're saying. You see,
so you don't want to complicate it?
I don't want to complicate these issues. If these are the 3 things, I have my position clear on it.
Let's then take a break. I want to come back and ask you a question in the light of the mature, responsive way in which you've met the IIT demands in the interview so far, whether you think there is an argument to say that perhaps your first response was impetuous, maybe now you might want to reconsider it. Let's take a break and come back and spend the last 4 minutes on that. That's in a moment's time. See you after the break. Welcome back to Devil's Advocate with the Human Resource Development Minister, Kapil Sibal. Mr. Sibal, in part one, you've gone to a terrific extent to reassure the IIT faculties and to meet their demands. Let me put two simple things that perhaps led to your being misunderstood, perhaps unintentionally, but they did end up giving some offense to the faculty. You said that you believed that the faculty were primarily motivated by a demand for higher salaries. They have always felt that what they're trying to protect is the excellence of their institution.
Well, you know, I maintain that. I'm sorry.
There you stand?
I stand.
You won't want to reconsider
I think that was the motivation, because I've met them. I've met them before. It's not the first time that this has happened. So let's not go into see, if they had come to say to me that, look, exceptional powers should be with the directors and with the board, there would be no situation. They said no question of contract, no question of this norm. You see, they took that position and they announced the hunger strike. Now it is a protest, much before any of this could be discussed.
So when it comes to this issue, that you have said that they are motivated really by money rather than...
I don't want to make any allegations. I don't want, since you asked the question, I put it, but I don't want to really enter into that arena. I personally think this is not an issue of autonomy, because you ask an IIT director, he will tell you there is more autonomy given to directors than anywhere else in the world, in the IIT system.
Let me raise another issue that in a sense grated with the faculties and perhaps led to the miscommunication and the misunderstanding between you and them. You said that their hunger protest was undignified. Do you think now that you've actually gone to such a terrific extent to reassure them on all their demands, you might want to reconsider that phrase?
No, I see. Let's not go back to all that. You see, I don't think, and I still stand by that, that any professor within the IIT system, especially when they are prospective Nobel laureates, should resort to these tactics. Dialogue is the way forward, either directly or through the directors. And I'm open to dialogue. I've always been open to dialogue.
The feeling I get in the second part of this interview is very different to the feeling you gave in the first. In the first part, you were bending over backwards to be understanding, to find ways of meeting their demands, of being cooperative. Now, when it comes to this issue of, do you think there was a communication gap between the two of you because of certain things you said, you're a bit more
rigid. There was no communication. Where's the question of a communication gap? There was no communication. They announced the hunger strike and then went on a hunger protest without communication. So, and I have not bent over backwards. This is exactly what my position was even earlier. Namely, the norm is that the exception always lies with the Board of Governors.
I began this interview by asking whether you were misunderstood. Do you think there was a sense in which the manner in which the IIT faculties raised these issues boxed you into a corner?
No. Let's not go into that. The point is, the IIT system is very precious to us. These people are very precious.
And that's what you want to underline?
And that's what I want to underline.
Are the faculty precious to
Very
us?
precious. The faculty, the students.
Including Professor Tanmosi, who heads the faculty?
Including. They are all very precious people. But they should really be talking about the way forward for India and scientific excellence in India,
so if I can,
instead of resorting to what has been resorted
to. If I can therefore interpret what you're saying, is it this? I disagree with the manner in which they went about pursuing their demands. They gave the impression that actually they were motivated by money rather than excellence, but I'd like to draw a line over it,
yes,
put it to the past and forget about
Absolutely.
it. And I want to say to them that even those who were out there protesting by going on hunger strikes or hunger fasts are precious to me.
Very precious, very precious. The system is very precious. We need India to move forward.
In which case, can I also add that through this interview you are reaching out to them and saying, let's let the past be over?
There is no rancor of the past either in my mind. There is no past. These people are part of the system which we will guard.
Kapil Sibal, a pleasure talking.